Welcome back to another David Rams live stream. And today, wow, we've got a really cool one today, haven't we? Going to be doing an exclusive Ask Me Anything Q&A. I say exclusive just to get you excited, really. It's not. I'm sure Ronnie's done Q&As before, but it's exclusive to today. Ronnie's not doing any other Q&A today. So it's just exclusive Q&A, Ask Me Anything with Ronnie Lee, 50 years vegan, 50 years animal rights activist. I'm very excited to have him here on the channel. So let's not waste any time. Let's bring Ronnie in. Welcome, mates, to the channel. Welcome back.
Hi, David. Yes, great to be back, and I'm looking forward to all these very interesting questions that are going to come up, and I hope I'll be able to answer all of them.
Absolutely, mate. I'm sure it's going to be. I'm sure it's going to be fine. I'm sure it's going to be a walk in the park. I mean, you've been doing this for 50 years now. I'm sure there's not one question someone could put you on the back foot with. But hey, guys, give it a go, guys.
Possibly, we'll have to see. Perhaps this is the day when it happens.
Hey, everyone can give it a try, can't they? So yeah. I'm expecting we're going to get a lot of questions today, guys. So if you do have questions, you can put them in the chat. But I'm going to try to keep an eye on it. But obviously, I'm going to be talking with Ronnie, so that I might not see it. All right. And the only way to guarantee that your question gets answered is to do what DJ Lernal has done and send them through a Streamlabs tip, which you can do with the link in the pinned comment, and also it's in the description as well. That's how you guarantee your questions get answered. And we already have quite a few from DJ Lernal. So should we start? Should we just kick right off with it? Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yes,
right.
Yes. Let's go for it.
Sweet. All right, we're going to start off with a basic one, and this is the reason I didn't give you any introduction is because I already knew people were going to ask these questions. So we're going to find out all about you and who you are as we go through. So the first question we're going to answer is from DJ Lionel, who tipped $10 to ask this. Thank you, and says, "How and why did you go vegan?"
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. That's a good one, because it goes right back to the beginning of everything.
Yeah, man.
How it all started was going back to my as I was growing up, there were instances where I took action to protect animals. There are several occasions where I'd intervene to stop people abusing animals, and even though these guys were often bigger than myself, there was a guy beating his dog in the park, and I intervened, and he was a big nasty guy, but I was so enraged, and he was the one that ended up shaking rather than me.
Oh, yeah.
And that was when I was a teenager. There were a few instances like that. So even before I kind of went vegan, or even vegetarian, or even knew anything about it, I think I kind of had it in me to stand up for other animals. But my kind of my journey, I suppose, towards going vegan started when I went vegetarian. I was 18, and my sister's boyfriend at the time, who later became her first husband, he was vegetarian. And I was curious about this. My mum was saying he was a crank, and she's going out with a lunatic now. He's one of these vegetarians, and I'd never really heard about vegetarians. I thought, what's that all about? So I spoke to him about it, spoke to my sister, and he'd been vegetarian since quite a young lad. He was a very good athlete. He represented the county at athletics. It obviously hadn't done his health any harm. And he said, well, we don't need to, kill any animals for food. We can live perfectly healthy without that, and so it's wrong to do it. And he says, I don't want any part of it. And I was a big meat eater at the time. I was one of these people that kind of sucked the marrow out of bones, right, and ate the bacon rind. I was one of them. Terrible. But it played on my mind, and I think I stayed awake about 3 nights running trying to find an excuse not to go vegetarian, and I couldn't. And so I decided, right, I'm going to go vegetarian, and my sister went vegetarian at the same time. But I was unaware of what happened with the dairy industry and the egg industry, of course. And so I was vegetarian for 2.5 years, and then I picked up a copy of the Vegetarian Society's magazine in a health food shop that I got into. And in there was an article about veganism. And straight away I thought, oh, this is appalling. I didn't know about all this, and I've got to go vegan. And I sent away from the Vegan Society, got information from them, and within about 2 or 3 weeks I'd become vegan. I'd adopted a vegan diet, and it all went from there.
And this was, again, so when you were 18, you went veggie, and then, sorry if I missed it, how long was it after that? What did you say?
It was 2.5 years.
Two
So
and
I
a
was
half years.
21 when
21.
I went vegan, and that was way back in, obviously 50 years ago. That was way back in 1972.
Wow, mad. And your
Yeah.
sister's boyfriend actually is what? So how did, do you know how did he come across it? Because he was, I was presuming he came across it even before you, right? Where he started to think about these things.
I mean, somehow, I don't know how he came across vegetarianism and became a vegetarian.
Right.
I don't know how that happened. But he certainly
yeah.
was where it kind of started. It kind of started off with him.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
And
It started like that. There were people around. You don't imagine, thinking all that way back. I mean, I guess we look at the world now, and it's, you come across a lot of people, vegans, and it seems it's pretty improbable, let's say, unlike that you would come across someone who said that specific reason is why they're a vegetarian, not health. Because they were. I guess there were health veggies back then or whatever. But
loads were veggie for health reasons then. Yes, I mean some for the animals as well. But I didn't. I mean, veganism was like unheard of. I'd never even heard the word vegan.
Yeah.
And until I, read this article by one of the kind of leading lights in the vegan society at the time, and that completely shocked me, because I just thought that, like I suppose a lot of people that are just vegetarian think that, the hens lay the eggs in the fields and they're just picked up, and the cows have to be milked, and they're all live forever, all of that, because you're not told any different, and I think you kind of like to think that everything's okay.
Of course, mate. Embarrassing for me, actually. I feel like I'm embarrassed a little bit, because it took you 2.5 years to figure that out from being veggie. I was born veggie, and I only went vegan when I was already university, and I was we had the internet, we had social media, we had all this stuff, and I still took years and years and years and years. So I'm a little bit embarrassed, to be honest with you, mate. So
it's to do with that. It's to do with receiving the information, and
totally.
This is why, for me, vegan outreach is so important, and why we need as much outreach as possible everywhere, because all of us went vegan because we received information. That may have been, as in my case, it was reading an article. With other people, it's getting a leaflet, watching a video, perhaps looking at a poster, TV ads now even, or probably more likely perhaps a combination of those things. It's receiving information. So the more information in various forms we can get out there, the more people are going to go vegan. It's just logical. That's what's going to happen.
Totally. Yeah, I agree, man. It's funny to kind of summarize your story. If you could summarize it in one sentence, I was just thinking, it's you went beating people up, and then you met a veggie. And then you went vegan. Kind of pretty much.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's a cool story,
yeah, pretty much. It kind of was a bit like that, and because I've known people that have been 30 years veggie before going vegan.
Right.
So I was pleased that obviously I was pleased that I kind of went veggie in the first place, and I met this guy that was veggie, but also that I received the information about veganism really so soon, in a sense, after going veggie.
Right.
And it wasn't just information about veganism. The same magazine, there were articles about animal experimentation, about hunting, about the fur trade. So it's the whole lot. I didn't know about any of those things either, and so I was kind of overwhelmed. It was horrifying to know that it was, the oppression of other animals by humans was far greater than I kind of thought. And I immediately joined all these different organizations, and I got involved in the Hunt Sabs as soon as I found out about the Hunt Sabs. And that's kind of how I started off, really, with direct action.
Right. So I can see why you're so passionate about information then, because look what it created. Look at you. Right? You're a product of it.
Yes, absolutely. And so's everyone. Everyone now that campaigns for veganism in whatever way, they became vegan because they received information, and now it's great that they're now trying to spread that information for others. And I think if all vegans could do that, even in a small way, we would be so much further on than we are now.
Right.
it's so important that we do that,
especially with the tools that we have now. I mean, there's not really an excuse not to, right? You don't even need to put yourself out there. You can create an anonymous account. You know, it's there's really no reason that we all can't, you know, pitch in some way to this, even if it's something minor, right? You can do there's a lot you can do, isn't there?
Everyone can do something. I mean, even I mean, we in our local vegan group, we do a lot of what I call door dropping, which is delivering leaflets through people's letterboxes, you know, to their homes. It's not possible to do that in all countries, I don't think, but in a lot of places you can.
Yeah.
And we have people that are kind of, their time is very short.
Yeah.
You know, maybe young mothers that have got kids and they're working as well, and just in their own time they'll go and maybe deliver 100 leaflets.
That's cool.
You know, it's just things like that. Even stuff like that everyone can do, and it's ever so easy. And if everyone did that, we'd be really fine.
Imagine, yeah, totally. The second part of this question, by the way, is just straight up asking how young are you? They're asking your age.
I'm 71.
71.
Yeah. I went vegan when I was 21, and 50 years later, I'm still here. I mean, it was amusing because when I said to my mum wasn't happy about us going vegetarian. My sister and I were still living at, you know, with my mum and dad. And when we told my mum, she said, "Oh, go out in the back garden, eat the grass. It needs cutting." You know, she didn't like it at all.
Nice.
You know, she'd been brought up on a farm in Ireland, and she thought that you had to have meat in order to survive. And of course, she got used to that, us being vegetarian. When I said I was going vegan, she said, "Oh, right." She said, "I'm not," because she used to cook the veggie food for us. She said, "I'm not cooking that." She said, "You'll have to do that." She said, "You'll be dead within a year."
Yeah.
so I've either not died within a year, or I've been a vegetable eating zombie for 49 years.
Mental, mate.
But that's the way people thought, and I think maybe some people still think that way, that you kind of,
it's
you
mad.
need animal protein.
They say, you know, like at the end of the day, they come out with stuff like that you're going to deteriorate, you'll have mental deterioration and stuff like that. And you know what's really messed up about it is, like, you know, they're saying that young people will suffer from like mental deterioration from eating a plant-based diet. Now, like, I don't want to offend you here, but I wouldn't consider you in that category anymore. I'd say you're probably considered an older gentleman at this point.
Yes, but to be polite, yes.
At 71, I think, you know.
Oldest true. The gentleman's true. I don't know. But yes, and I, you know, really, you know, my health through my life has been pretty good. I mean, you know, being vegan isn't going to kind of guarantee that you're going to escape all illnesses, you know, not at all. But I think a healthy vegan diet, and you know, a healthy lifestyle as well, you know, getting sufficient exercise and stuff like that, it does give you a bit better chance.
Right.
We're not all dealt with the same card at birth. You know, people have, you know, genetic propensities for illnesses as well and stuff. You know, but I think, you know, a healthy vegan diet and lifestyle does give you a better chance.
Yeah, they got the.
I'd say definitely.
Or is it genetics loads the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger, right? That's how it works.
Kind of, yes. I think that's true. Yeah.
And my point there was to say that, you know, you're here now at 71. You're operating a podcast. Are you doing live streams? You're here with me. You're doing activism. You're out on the streets. You're incredibly active, both mentally and physically. So if the deterioration was going to happen, it would have. Yeah, I think, you know what I mean. Over the last 50 years,
it would have happened.
Right.
Already.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think keeping active is key as well. I think keeping active kind of helps to keep you healthy.
For sure.
And keeps your mind alert. And, you know, if you're also kind of, you know, I'll do a lot of stuff. You know, I'll do a lot of delivering leaflets, and I kind of try and do that as quickly as possible. That's a form of exercise at the same time. And, you know, it's important to keep us be physically active as well, and to kind of, and I think keeping busy is good, is good for mental health, and it's good for physical health as well. If there's some physical activity involved in that.
100%. It's completely scientifically proven. There's not even a question that you need to do physical and mental activity stimulation, obviously all the way through your life, but especially as you start to get towards, I don't know what you call old age or whatever, especially as you start to tip over into like
yes.
then it's incredibly important. And
it is, yes.
But if you get into the habits as a young person, then if you get into the habits in your 20s, then you'll be set for life if you can keep it up all the way through to
absolutely. I think that's right. I think and a lot of it is habit. A lot of it is getting kind of into a routine of doing those things.
Totally. So we have, by the way, guys, I'm going through the questions that have been tipped. So they've been sent to me by Streamlabs first, right? That's a priority. So if you have questions that you're burning questions you really want to ask Ronnie, that's the way to do it. Otherwise, put them in the chat and I'll try to get to them after I've gone through these questions. The links to the Streamlabs tip is in the pinned comment and also in the description. So DJ Lernal, again, with another couple questions here. We've got, are you whole food plant-based? And then a follow-up question to that. Do you eat vegan junk, vegan fast food?
I would say mostly whole food. Okay. I do eat some fast food, but it's really quite a small part of my diet. And we kind of at home, I live with two other people, and so we buy the food together, and we'll eat the same thing. So it's kind of to do with what they like to eat as well as what I like to eat. But in general, we eat stuff that's cooked from basic ingredients rather than processed stuff. We do have some processed stuff. We do have some kind of vegan sausages and stuff like that sometimes, and pies, but a lot of it is still cooked from basic ingredients. And that's kind of that's what I was used to, because when I first became vegan, there weren't any of these, there weren't any kind of vegan foods that were kind of trying to be like cheese or trying to be like meat. I mean, there were some, and they were absolutely horrible. Yeah. but by and large they weren't, and so I had to what happened was, going back to earlier I said about my mum refusing to cook for me, I had a little enamel pot, right, that I used to cook my savoury in. She'd cook the vegetables, and I'd have to make sure that she didn't put milk in my mashed potatoes or cook my roasties in beef fat, and so sometimes I couldn't eat those either. But I'd kind of boil up lentils, or I'd soak chickpeas or soak black-eyed beans and boil them up and fry up some onions and tomatoes, and I'd make them a little savoury. Right. And there's a funny story to do with that. I kind of been vegan. I thought I'd been vegan. I thought I'd been living on a vegan diet for about 10 days. And I walked in the kitchen. I caught my mum breaking an egg into my little enamel pot, into my food. And I said, "Oh, hey, Mum, what are you doing? I don't eat eggs." "You know I don't eat eggs." And she turned around to me. She said, "I'm keeping you alive." So I said, "Mum, if you carry on, I won't eat here anymore. I'll not eat at home. I'll go and, And she said, "Right, I won't do it again. But if you die, you die." So, but I've not died. But I thought, has she been all these years? Has she been secretly sneaking around the house, like breaking an egg into my food and someone else?
I can imagine. I could just imagine your mum putting the eggs back in the fridge and saying the Russian from Rocky, "If he dies, he dies." Put in the
it's kind of like it was like that. Yeah. Cool. I mean, if I hadn't walked in at that moment, she'd have carried on probably for months and months. Okay. But it was. I mean, she was genuinely worried.
Yeah,
I mean, it was she genuinely thought that you had to have animal protein, and a lot of people did at the time.
Right. And they still do now, mate.
They still do now.
Mental, isn't it? But I imagine it was, crazy. I mean, with the lack of, right now, all the information's at your fingertips. Back then, where, getting that information, I can imagine was a lot more difficult. So I could understand why more people would think it then. Nowadays, there's no excuse, but,
No, that's right. It is a lot better now.
For sure. Yeah. But people still look for reasons to purposefully misunderstand.
They'll look at people seek to find any excuse. I mean, I did, when I was confronted with, going vegetarian, my sister's boyfriend, who was vegetarian, and, I was trying to find any excuse in my own head not to go veggie. I mean, he hadn't said to me, "You've got to go vegetarian." He hadn't tried to make me veggie, but obviously because I cared about other animals, it played on my mind, and I went through this mental process of like trying to kind of
justify yourself,
and I couldn't,
yeah,
so I
mate.
thought, right, I'm gonna have to change it. And that was more in some ways, going veggie was more difficult than going vegan, because I was a big meat eater. I wasn't
Right.
really into dairy. I wasn't really bothered about cheese and stuff. So going veggie was probably more difficult for me than going vegan in that sense.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. It's a less of a jump, isn't it, veggie to vegan? Because I guess the first jump from so if somebody does go to veggie, you know, it's ethically at least, right? I guess that's like a big deal, because it's like that's the first ethical stance they probably ever taken. So it's like a very big
Yes.
deal. But then veggie to vegan, it's kind of like, for me it was nothing. For example, I really didn't,
Yes.
you know, it was like but I was born veggie, and then, you know, for me it was just like a slight change. It wasn't like,
yes,
I guess, like, yeah, so I understand that.
It was for me. I mean, for a lot of people, it's all about the cheese, isn't it? Like,
Right, yeah.
Oh, I can't get on with the vegan cheese, and you hear all that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But like at the end of the day, it is only a taste,
Right.
isn't it?
Right.
You know, and it's just a question of like getting used to maybe a slightly different taste. And you know, they seem to want the vegan cheese to taste exactly the same. You know, it doesn't taste exactly the same as the dairy cheese.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you know, it's killing me to have to give up the dairy cheese. But what? You know, if while you're eating the dairy cheese, it's killing all these animals.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
just for a taste.
Like, don't be a slave to a flavor. I mean, Jesus, you know.
Yeah, and then we've got these millions of delicious flavors, you know, from plant food.
Totally.
You know, I mean, you know, put garlic and onion in anything, and
it's the best thing ever. That's it.
Maybe not ice cream or something like that, but you know, it's
maybe not.
It's the same it is, you know, and like, you know, especially with kind of food from, you know, other countries. It's the spices and flavorings that make it, isn't it? Like curries and chilies and all these things.
Yeah.
And so it's that creates the flavor rather than the meat, and you know. But this is what I just, you know, I tried to explain to people doing outreach, when you always get this cheese thing, and I said, well, think about it. It is only a taste. It's only a taste, and what you got to do is like kind of break yourself of that. Just maybe stop eating cheese altogether for a while.
Yeah.
And then try the vegan cheese, so that you've forgotten about the taste of the dairy cheese.
Definitely.
But to me, it's a big fuss. You know, it's like, you know, animals are dying because of your choice to eat, you know, dairy products.
It's shit, isn't it? That's the shit thing about outreach, is that we've got to kind of at times when they've gotten the ethical points and stuff. Sometimes we've got to kind of like hide our disgust in their excuses, right? And just try to deal with them on a personal level about the, you know, things they like and don't like, as opposed to reminding them constantly, like, hey, but you know, because
I mean, I try to.
It's like a balance, right?
I try to put it in ethical, but I think quite often it's good to, rather than kind of say something that people might regard as a direct attack on them. Is to kind of tell a personal story, to say, look, I was a big meat eater. I'll say I was a big meat eater. And, you know, I did, you know, although it wasn't a big thing in my life, you know, like I did, you know, enjoy the taste of cheese as well. And so, of course, you know, the reason I stopped eating those things was because I thought about the animals. So rather than attacking them, I'm talking about me and how I dealt with it. And so then they can, you know, hopefully relate that to themselves. Definitely. And so it comes across as less confrontational. I suppose they'll see it as less confrontational.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you. I agree. There are many methods. That's a good one. I like that one. Sometimes I try to get them to imagine themselves not being able to eat cheese. I like to do this. So they say, oh, but cheese. And you say there's vegan cheese, but I don't like vegan cheese. Okay, what would you do tomorrow if you woke up and you were just completely lactose intolerant? You couldn't eat cheese ever again, and any cheese, like, what would you eat instead then? And then they imagine themselves, oh, I guess I would try the vegan cheese. Okay, and how would you find the best vegan cheese that fits your taste? Well, they tell you, like, oh, I guess I'd have to buy the different ones and see. Okay, then. So why not wake up tomorrow and do that then? You know,
absolutely. That's very good. Right? I'll remember that.
Yeah, they put themselves in that. You know, it helps them to imagine life like that. And I know it seems And all of this is like, it's that's what I was trying to get at earlier. What we really want to say is, you selfish fucker. Like,
well, I think there's a whole. I was thinking of doing like a kind of phrase book between. There's something I call stall speak. It's called stall speak, and it's how you talk to people at a store.
Okay.
And you say to people when you're at a store or a stand or whatever people call it, spreading vegan information and speaking to members of the public, you use a different language to what you really mean, because you can't really say what you think.
Of course,
like you're selfish shit, what's the matter with you,
Yeah.
You can't say that because, that counterproductive. So I was thinking of kind of doing this phrase book where what we say to people in this stall speak is kind of translated into English, and it would be quite humorous, because we do that, and you have to do that. You have to kind of not really say to people what you think.
That'll be a funny book. I think it would be obviously quite comedy, wouldn't it, as well? I think it would be really good.
Be quite rude as well.
Totally.
There'd be quite a few swear words contained within
it. Totally.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yes, I may do that, actually.
So on the topic of food, we kind of got into food for a little bit, then got out of it. But there is a second part to this question. Again, DJ Lernal, this is one of their other questions. Then they've got one more bunch of questions. Then we'll get to other people's questions. And again, remember, if you guys want to guaranteed answers here, you're going to have to use the Streamlabs tip. Otherwise, I will try to get to them in the comments. So the last part they asked, what is your favorite food or meal that you cook, if you cook, or in a restaurant?
I love a hot curry.
Hey,
I love a hot curry. I'll always have at least like Madras heat in my curries. I think the best meal I ever had, which was a delivery from a Balti place, was a chickpea, cauliflower, and potato Balti, and I think it was Vindaloo. And I always remember that. It was so nice. But I like any kind of hot curry like that would probably be my favourite. Although I do like, do like lots of other things. Chilies, like a vegan chili, stir fries, lasagna, lots of stuff. But probably if I was really forced to choose, yes, it would be a hot curry or Balti, or like an Indian type dish.
Yeah, I've got these fond memories of my mum on the phone to the local Indian takeaway, because that's the only kind of, well, until recently at least, that was the only vegan Indian takeaway you could get, right? Even I was vegan like 13 years back, so you'll definitely know what I'm talking about when you're on the phone. You're like, no cream, no milk. No cream. I do understand. Cream, no milk. And they're like, sometimes, eventually they get used to you, right? They know it's you. And then it's like, okay, no cream, no milk. Yeah. But it's,
I find a lot of them now have actually got vegan menus. So certainly of course, kind of local to where I am, they've got a vegan section because they know there's a big demand.
It's awesome now, right? Yeah,
so much easier.
But back in the day, it was
very nice. Yeah,
and there was always like times there'd be like a depending on where you call, and there'd be like some kind of language barrier as well, and you're like trying your hardest to get it through like real clear, because it could just end up coming with the fucking some kind of cream or ghee as well, which we only found out about like a lot later actually, that a lot of Indians are using even in Indian restaurants in England use ghee. Which I didn't know for years. I only learned about it in India. I didn't know it existed.
They kind of do. I think it's less these days than it was, but I think they still do. So you have to. That's probably the kind of most difficult thing, and the thing that you kind of have to be careful of.
Yeah.
But I think there is a lot more understanding now.
Oh, for sure.
About vegan food.
Yeah. When I was in India, we'd say that no ghee, no cream, no milk, and they go, okay, then just one small spoon of ghee. One small. You're like, no, not even a small. They're like, yeah, but it's just one small spoon. It has to go in. They tell you, no, we have to. It won't taste good without it. And we're like, it's fine. We'd have to argue with them, like, no, it's absolutely fine. Please don't put it in. Yeah. Please don't put it in.
I know, it kind of can be difficult, but yes, but I suppose that would be like, if pushed, that would be my favourite.
Nice.
That would be my favourite food.
Nice one, nice. All right, and we got one more set of questions from DJ Lionel again. Thank you again so much for all these tips and all of your enthusiasm for these questions for Ronnie. They're great questions. Do you meditate?
No.
Okay.
I tried to meditate. If I ever try to meditate, I just fall asleep, which might be a good, which kind of might be a good thing.
Yeah.
Which might be a good thing. No, I've never
It's that
really
lack of protein.
kind of
That's
got
what it is,
into.
mate. You're just tired.
Yeah, probably just tired all the time. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And as a 50-year vegan, what do you think of the growth of veganism since you began?
Well, I think it's brilliant that there are so many vegans now. I mean, it's interesting that the kind of whole story of the growth of veganism and the growth of the animal rights movement and the various stages that it's gone through. I mean, obviously you've got the Vegan Society being formed in 1944. Veganism itself wasn't really defined until about 51 by Leslie Cross. But and kind of really back in those days, very few people were vegan. And kind of when I became vegan, I contacted the Vegan Society, said I'd become vegan, and you could almost hear the vegan champagne corks popping in the background because somebody else has become vegan. It's the second one so far.
They put it up on the tally on the whiteboard.
It was pretty much like that.
Wow.
Pretty much like that, and it was such a small community. I mean, I got invited to a garden party down in. I lived in Luton at the time. I got invited. It was down in Leatherhead in Surrey, and it was like. All the main people from the Vegan Society were there, and they invited me. There were so few vegans that every vegan in the country was invited to this garden party. They didn't all go, but that was like the kind of size of the kind of vegan, the vegan community at the time. And then what happened was, I mean, the 70s was was where the kind of basically the animal rights movement really started. There was this big upsurge in people campaigning for animal rights, the hunt sabs, a lot of people getting involved in hunt sabs. And the Vegan Society, there was a program put on at the time, I think it may have been by BBC Two, called Open Door, where various groups, campaigning groups, community groups, and such like, could put on a television program about what they did, and they got assistance from technicians. The camera crew would come along and help them make their own program. And the Vegan Society did one of those about veganism, and it led to a huge increase in their membership and a big increase in people becoming vegan. And that kind of really took off from there. And then people that were getting involved in the animal rights movement, getting involved in hunt sabs, in campaigning against animal experimentation, all those things, kind of rubbed shoulders with vegans that were involved in that, and then they too became vegan. I mean, I was involved in running a hunt sab group in North London in the kind of sort of mid to late 70s, and we turned loads of people vegan. They joined as meat eaters and weren't interested. I'm not interested in veganism. I just want to save the fox. We said, okay, right. But within 2 weeks, they'd be vegan. That's because awesome. Of rubbing shoulders with us. And we turned a lot of people vegan just through that group. And that's kind of, where the growth of veganism came from. And then, but I think one of the problems back in the day, there was really no outreach. That what happened was, although there was an increase in vegans, those vegans were, and a lot more vegans in those days were activists. That you probably, it got to a stage where probably 95% of people who were vegan were also activists.
Got it, right.
But they weren't activists in vegan outreach. They were activists like campaigning against animal experiments, campaigning, hunt sabs and that thing. There was really no vegan activism.
Got it. So there was like a relatively small spread, let's say, of vegan messages. It was more just like you kind of went vegan from like rubbing shoulders with a vegan, and then you went and joined the fight directly. Like...
And then you were a vegan yourself.
Got it.
And it was considered very important to be vegan. And people would say, well, why are you telling these people, not to experiment on animals, not to hunt, while you're eating animals yourself? It's kind of contradictory. And there was that going on. But no one campaigned for veganism, and vegan campaigning, vegan outreach, really only really got going in the mid 1990s. Perhaps 20 years later. And I think that's a shame in a way, because I think had it started earlier, we'd be further on. That we'd have more vegans now had it started, earlier. But it kind of didn't. And I think maybe the reason for that was that you had this increase in people that believed in animal rights, that wanted animal rights. Even the idea of animal rights arose in the 70s. Before that, there'd been various organisations campaigning for animals, anti-vivisection, anti-fur trade, and anti-hunting. And basically, all these new people that were kind of more, they were more radical, more militant. They kind of really mirrored what those existing organisations were doing, but kind of took it to another level.
Right.
And I think because there had been no previous campaigning for veganism, the Vegan Society wasn't really a campaigning organisation, like in terms of like street campaigning or anything like that. That never got transferred over to this more radical and militant form of action.
Okay.
And so that kind of didn't, and that may be the reason why that kind of didn't happen. And it's great that it has happened and that it's going on now. I think that there needs to be a hell of a lot more of it, because the situation now is there's so many more people now that identify as vegan. But rather than back in the day where you had, nearly all vegans were activists, now, almost all vegans aren't active in terms of spreading the vegan message. And I think that's a tragedy, because there's so much potential, there for to creating rapid change, by, through education, through outreach. And it's kind of wasted because people aren't active. And, by active, I don't mean going out and chaining yourself to a steering wheel of a dairy lorry or a truck, or all these things, or anything, just kind of doing, helping at an information stall or delivering some leaflets, or
more like social kind of
so community type stuff that anyone can do. And that doesn't mean that you're going to end up being carted off, or that it's not going to interfere. You can fit it into your everyday life really easily. And I think if all vegans would kind of consider what they can do to actually spread the message, we'd really be getting somewhere, because it would kind of change the whole ethos of society, the way that so many more people would think, and that would be reflected then not just in people's dietary choices in their lifestyle, not contributing to the oppression of other animals, but also politically in terms of vegans becoming politicians, vegans voting for vegan politicians. We completely change the nature of the administration, as well as changing people's lifestyle and diet. And it's really all down to, and another really important thing within that is people being organisers and instigators, because people can do solo outreach. I mean, I do a lot of it. I'll take leaflets with me and I'll leave them in public places and public transport and things. Everyone can do, or even delivering them. People can do it on their own. But with a small group of people, you can achieve a lot more. And I think in order to do that, you need people to be instigators in local areas, saying, right, I'm going to go and do this, and who's going to come with me? We got vegans. I mean, certainly in the UK and probably most of the countries in the world, there's a lot more vegans now. There'll always be vegans near you. Get them involved. Say, you're going to come with me, and we'll, go to this community event, and we'll do an info stall, or we'll deliver some leaflets or whatever, and get people involved. And it's those instigators that are vital, really.
I agree, mate. And I think we discussed this actually, but off the record. I'm glad we're bringing it up again now, because I wanted to kind of say what I said to you back then. And I think if I was to pinpoint any one issue that I see quite clearly within this movement, and probably within most movements, but I only know this one because I'm not involved in others, but is that these instigators, these leaders we're talking about, the type of people who are more likely to be instigators and leaders also tend to be very, very confident, potentially bordering on arrogant at times, right? And this is the kind of personality that somebody would have who is willing to step up and start telling people, let's do this, right? It just comes with it. And not everybody who's like that is arrogant, but it's quite common, let's be honest, right? And what I'm noticing more and more of is I visit a lot of countries all over Europe, and I've been all over the world talking to vegans. And these people in each country, in each city, there is one of these people, an instigator, a leader, someone who started the movement, someone who started, I mean, the activism movement, or didn't start, obviously, but somebody who, I don't know, restarted it or started a new group. And almost every time, every single time, there is another group that is against that person, right? Or there are people who hate that person because, and when you ask why, this person's too rude, or they're not friendly enough, or they upset this person because they said something mean to them or something. And it's almost always the case. So I think I agree with you that we need instigators, but I also think what I'd love to see is people realizing that when you have an instigator or a strong person who's very opinionated and ready to go out there and be outspoken, you've also got to accept that they do come with a few caveats, and they will tend to maybe from time to time talk to you in a way that you might not like or piss somebody off. And I feel like as a movement, if we understood that the leaders and instigators will slip up sometimes, and that comes with the territory of being super, confident enough to start a movement, to start a group. And then just when they're like that, don't get too offended. It's not personal. It's just part of that personality that person has that also allows them to lead your group. I feel like this would be a really good level of understanding. I feel we'd have a lot more groups and a lot more happier people, and a lot less conflict. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I kind of, and I think also that things get misinterpreted and misunderstood.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Where people will think that you said or meant something that you kind of didn't mean. It's almost deliberately misinterpreted sometimes, sure. And I think that can be a problem. Sure. But I'd say if people are in an area and there's someone instigating things and they don't like the way that person's operating, well, all right, you don't need to be involved in that person. Start your own thing. Get together with people, sure, that you actually get on with and you feel happy with, and do your own outreach.
But that's hard, Ronnie. That's hard, you see, and that's the problem.
Yeah, you see, well, this
it's easier
is
to complain.
Kind of, we can all do stuff.
Absolutely.
And in a sense, we can all be instigators. Like even if it's amongst a small group of people, if we have a small circle of vegan friends, and say there's a few vegan friends and that kind of aren't active in terms of kind of getting out there and spreading the message, why not say, well, let's kind of include that as part of our friendship, include that
Absolutely.
as part of our kind of activities that we do.
Way of
we'll go out and do a bit of outreach,
great way of bonding.
And then we can go.
It really bonds people, right?
And then we can do some socializing afterwards. After we can reward ourselves for this outreach we've done by going to the vegan cafe and having a nice meal together. And it's a really lovely combination because, when I've done things like that, when you have the vegan meal or whatever after you've done that, it tastes better because you feel that you've kind of earned
Definitely.
it. You've done some outreach first.
I totally agree.
And so if I'd say to people, look, like you kind of, like it's difficult that it's not. Because people are vegans, it's because people are humans. I think humans, there is a thing with humans. Humans do fall out, and certain personalities don't get on with other personalities. Yeah. But the thing is, if there's someone, I'd say to people, someone in your area that's instigating things, and for some reason you don't get on with that person, then do your own thing. Do your own outreach, do your own stuff.
And if you can't do that, or you're not willing to do that, maybe suck it up and understand that this person is, and respect that, and carry on, and just get on with it. I think that's kind of the other option, right?
I think it has to be taken into, the importance of instigating stuff has to be taken into consideration within the in the whole way that kind of we view people, because no one's perfect. No one's perfect. And I think it's much more important to focus on the positive points of someone. Everyone's got positive points and negative points, but it's far better to focus on the positive, the big positive points of someone than the smaller negative points. But people so often focus on the negative, and try to find what's wrong with the person rather than looking at what's positive about it. That is a problem.
They assume negative intent from them. Like when someone does something, they're like, they did that to get me, and it's like, no, they didn't. They really didn't. It's just not always.
I think so. I think that's that is a trait within humans.
Absolutely.
Rather than vegans. It's something, but what we've got to focus on is what is the most important thing. And I think to me, and I think it should be for all of us that the most important thing is like achieving animal liberation. You know, and if we really kind of focus on that, other things become kind of smaller, and other issues become kind of less importance, because we're focused on the like real big issue. And it is the biggest issue of all. When you look at the number of animals that suffer and are slaughtered because of what humans do, it's kind of horrendous. I mean, the food industry, I think it's 50,000 a second, isn't it? Worldwide, animals are killed, food industry, and then if all the other ways that humans oppress the rest, it's horrific. And so this is the most horrendous thing that's kind of really ever happened on this planet. So therefore, the struggle against it must therefore be the most important thing. And so the most important thing anyone can ever do in their life is to be somehow involved in that struggle.
Yeah.
And to kind of really focus on that and do whatever they can, and that's the most important thing. And everything else is less than that. And it's getting it into perspective and kind of really understanding the situation that we're in. That, you know, we live on this planet that's dominated by this tyrant species. I mean, it doesn't have to be a tyrant. Human species doesn't have to be tyrannical, but it's turned out that our species is, and all these other animals have been oppressed, and you know, and struggling against that and ending that and bringing about animal liberation is kind of the kind of most important thing really that's ever happened, and you know, that's where our focus needs to be.
Totally. I think it's almost like it's kind of like what the message really is we are human. And I know it's hard. This is easier said than done, but it's about get out of your head, right? You know, get out of your head for a second and try your hardest to look at things objectively with perspective as often as you possibly can. Even though we all get caught up in emotions, we all get caught up in our shit. It happens. You can't eradicate it, but just try your hardest to be aware of it, and you know, following your advice, Ronnie, there, and putting things into perspective can really help someone to get out of their head, to get out of that headspace, that negative headspace. So the second part of this question, by the way, is this is a really hard question. So I mean, just you can simplify it if you want, and just kind of give a brief answer, or you can go into depth. It's up to you, but it's quite vague. Again, by DJ Lionel, thank you. How do you see the next 50 years of the vegan movement? Now, again, that's super vague. So I mean, you could maybe just give a few predictions, maybe 50 years from now. How do you think it's going to be?
It's kind of, well, it's more, it's impossible to really know how things are going to turn out. It's kind of what I'd like to see. I can tell you what I'd like to see.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'd like to see, obviously, you know, what I've just been talking about is as you know, as many vegans as possible, and all vegans should consider this, you know, becoming active in whatever way they can, to spread the message. And you kind of got there's something kind of happening at the moment that I see as very positive in the rise of kind of direct action, or a form of direct action, you know, very different in a way to what we used to do with the Animal Liberation Front, you know, back in the day. But you've got groups like Animal Rebellion that are taking this form of direct, because people can't really do direct action anymore and hope to get away with it. Which is what we did, and so what you kind of do has to be tailored to that. You can't really do anything that's like really seriously criminal, because you're not going to get away with it, and you're going to end up like with the key thrown away. So, you know, what you're seeing now is forms of direct action that, like, are illegal, but are illegal in a fairly minor way.
Right.
So no one's going to end up like with like 10-20 years in jail for it. And people can carry on doing it and stuff like that. And you're seeing that with Animal Rebellion. You're seeing that with other stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, stuff like Meet the Victims, where people go into a factory farm and, you know, it kind of expose what's going on. That type of direct action now, where people aren't trying to get away,
right? And
they're willing to take the hit, because that hit isn't going to be massive.
Sure.
And I think it's great that's, because I think that's to what extent that kind of have an effect on the government. Certainly this government, I kind of don't know, but I think it certainly has an effect in raising public awareness and raising public consciousness, And that's like the kind of shockwave in a sense that's moving forward. And I think, behind or around that shockwave, we need to have a huge amount of education, so, so that kind of adds to that with the general public. And so the public understand why people are doing that.
Right.
And there's kind of, because I think what happened back in the day and where, what we did with the Animal Liberation Front achieved a great deal, but nevertheless it was still limited, was we had no interaction with the public.
Right.
Our struggle was directly against the people that oppressed animals, trying to put them out of business, trying to get animals out of places, and achieved a great deal. But it was never going to move forward to a situation of what I would call like widespread animal liberation,
right,
because we did nothing really to educate the public. Like I said, there wasn't vegan outreach in those days or anything like that. Whereas now that's changed, and we've got the potential for a massive educational effort to accompany that type of direct action that's going on. So you kind of got that joint thing. You're building a foundation of understanding, and a foundation that can also change things politically, because, so I think we can only, there's very little that, not just for this government, but governments throughout the world, because they're so kind of, they're basically like human supremacist speciesists, aren't they? Like they're kind of very, very hard to get any movement in terms of like animal liberation or even animal protection from them. And so basically you've got to change the nature of the administration. And like I said before, you do that by creating more vegans, you have more vegans, you change that. And so I think this joint effort of, this kind of new form of direct action, coupled with widespread education that all vegans do, is an absolutely winning formula by which we could, if enough of this happens, we could move really quite rapidly. Okay. I mean, we're faced with a horrendous edifice of oppression of other animals, all these, but I think if, we've got the potential to fairly rapidly change that if people become active.
And you think that's going to, do you predict, if you were going to make a guess, would you say in the next 50 years that this is how it's going to go, like based on how it is now? Do you believe that it can happen, like that we can have this pressure from both sides like that, and it would achieve some big things?
I think in terms of the direct action side of it, I think the what Animal Rebellion did recently was very inspirational and very positive. And I think on that side, things are, it's good. On the educational side, I think not so good. I think, we need far more vegans to get involved in education, and we need vegans to see themselves as part of this struggle, that there is this chance to radically change the world, to radically, make the world a better place for other animals, and for us humans as well, and it's like, this, the saying, seize the time. We need to seize the time. Now is the time. This is all kind of, there's this massive potential now, for us to seize the moment and to kind of, for there to be this mobilization, this huge mobilization of vegans, and for everyone to feel themselves a part of this, a part, we're all part, even though we may be doing different things, we can all see ourselves as like, in whatever way, as part of this big movement that's going to change things so massively for the better.
I see what you're getting at, because it's like when someone is vegan, it is a fantastic thing, and it's, unknowingly they are part of the solution, right? Unknowingly they are kind of like what the word would be, indirect part of the solution, because they're no longer contributing to the problem, right? So it's great, it's awesome, like well done, but you can be a bigger part of the solution. You can be part of the this movement, this big, huge momentum that actually changes the world. Right now, you are part of the change, right? But you're very indirectly part of the change. Like you've removed yourself from the issue. And all it takes is like one little tick, okay, you start doing flyers, it doesn't take much for you to be part of the actual, the movement solution to these problems.
Yeah.
Right. It's really one little step, isn't it?
Yeah. Because I always thought, like as soon as I became vegan, I thought immediately, well, that's great, but it's not enough, because there's all these loads of other people that aren't vegan.
Right.
And so it's not enough, just me being vegan. Yes, that's going to kind of
great.
Make some difference, and that's brilliant. It's the first step. But I thought, if I want to kind of really free animals from oppression, I've got to do something about all these other people. Otherwise, that's never going to end. And so that's how we have to think. It's kind of not enough just to be, vegan ourselves. all that's great. It's better than not being vegan. We're no longer contributing to that, and that's it's a first. But to see that as a first step, because everyone that's vegan, genuinely vegan, in that they're vegan because they believe in animal liberation, obviously want animal liberation, but we're not going to get animal liberation unless we educate loads more people to become vegan. So if you really want what you believe in, then you kind of need to be active in some way in order to achieve that.
Yeah, and it doesn't really, and like I said, it's not even a big ask. It really doesn't take a lot. It really doesn't take a lot to just do something. Oh my God, imagine millions of people doing one tiny little thing. That's millions of tiny little things.
And everyone's different. I mean, some people, they're drawn to that. They want to do the kind of big stuff. That's kind of, they passionately feel, I want to go and kind of do some big striking thing. well, great if that's how they are as a person, and their kind of circumstances of their life allow them to kind of do that. And it doesn't matter if you get arrested and because you haven't got the responsibilities that would stop you from doing that. Then brilliant, and we've kind of seen that, and one thing that's kind of really inspired me is so many more younger people get involved in stuff. I mean, for many years, I don't know where young people went, and we'd be, I'd be doing an action, and we'd be all like, fairly elderly people. I thought we're just going to end up like coming here on Zimmer frames, and then we'll die, and then that's the end of it, And it was at one time I really worried, where are the young people? But now, especially with stuff like Animal Rebellion, seeing these young people coming through, and they're absolutely brilliant, and it like makes my heart sing in a way to see this.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not all young. I mean, my wife's involved in Animal Rebellion, and she's not quite as old as me, but she's not, you wouldn't describe her as a young person. So not just young people. There are older people as well, but there's a lot of young people, and for the first time we're seeing that, and I think that's brilliant.
No, it is for sure. And related to this question as well, actually, I've got another question from Live Cruelty Free Now, who tips $10. Thank you so much, and says, "Hello, love your videos, David. Question for Ronnie: what's the next best effective method or methods to do animal rights activism for animals as an alternative to street teaching or street outreach?" So the next best thing, if they don't want to do street outreach or your table, the street stalls, what's the next best thing in your opinion?
Well, it's kind of, the idea of next best thing is kind of difficult, because I think it's, there are a lot of things that are great, and there's things that don't involve being on the street. It kind of depends on whether, the question is about, a totally different form of activism, because of course, in terms of outreach, we don't just do outreach on the street. We'll book information stalls at like community events. For instance, we have greener living fairs. We're involved with the local environmental community, and we're kind of part of that, so it allows us to have stalls at those events.
That's really smart, by the way, just to pause you there, because then you're dealing with the low-hanging fruit, right? People who go to these things to find new information. So that's actually really smart. That's actually I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, we do that, and it's something that a lot of groups don't do. People tend to do stuff on the street, and that's great. That's absolutely brilliant. What kind of happens at the moment is that most vegan outreach, and certainly in the UK, and it's probably the same throughout the world, takes place in the centre of big cities, where there's quite a lot of people become involved in. They're doing Cube of Truth or an Earthlings or We the Free, or they'll do something, in a big event in the middle of the city, and that's brilliant. These things are great, but so little happens elsewhere. The smaller cities or towns or suburbs of cities, even villages. There's nothing happening in so many, and yet people live in all these places. And so I'd say to people like, don't stop going to the big event, but think about what can you do locally, like kind of where you live. Can you organise or instigate something there where there's nothing taking place? And then a lot more people would get involved in that. People that are kind of more kind of tied to the local area, who wouldn't go to the big city, would get involved more in the local outreach, and certainly that's what we find locally with our groups. So there's that, but we do, and the other place we do stalls is at animal rescue events or dog rescue events, where they do these fun dog shows, to raise funds to rescue, and we'll book a stall there. You've got to pay for it, but it's going to a good cause. It's not a lot of money. And then, of course, we'll kind of do stalls on the theme of like, you care about one animal because everyone there cares about dogs. Yeah. What about these others that are just as aware and just as deserving of your care and consideration? And we'll kind of we'll do stalls at that event because once again, in a sense, that's low hanging fruit as well because you're dealing with people that at least care about some animals. You see, and it's kind of thinking that doing information stalls doesn't just have to be on the street.
Yeah,
it can be at community events as well, and different places. And the other thing that people can do, I mean, people don't want to be involved in anything like this. There's a lot people can do individually. Like I said, I carry leaflets around with me, and I leave them in public places and stuff like that, and that kind of thing. So there's kind of a lot that a lot of ways in terms of that sort of outreach that doesn't necessarily have to be on the street.
That's really good advice, actually. Really good advice, because for a lot of people, going out on the street and dealing with the raw, unadulterated public idiots, which there are a lot of, and they will come over and they will be idiots. That's very scary for a lot of people. And even for me, even though I'm used to it, I still don't enjoy when someone comes over and starts mouthing off. So for somebody who's anxious, I imagine that's really not pleasant. So that's great advice from you, because I mean, how many people are going to kick off at a environmental gathering? How many people are going to kick off at a dog protection event? You know what I mean? As long as you're not kicking off, right? It's going to be pretty. It's going to be all right, isn't it?
It acts as a film. I mean, we've done stalls on the street this year and really haven't had aggro. Not really at all. Not like we used to. It's become less, much less than it kind of used to be at one time. But yes, I mean, if you're doing a stall at a dog rescue event, there is a filter there that's kind of filtered out like kind of people that don't give a shit about anything, obviously.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So
maybe just don't try. Maybe don't bring along any flyers for Elwood's Organic to that event. Maybe just avoid that kind of flyering if you're going to go and do that. There's a great troll. The website, the Elwood's Organic Dog Meat, right? The trolls. You heard about these guys?
Yes, I kind of have the names familiar. Anyway,
they do. There's a fake dog meat company, and
and it's to do with like promoting.
It's all vegan, yeah. But they're very professional looking.
I have been tempted to do a dog burger stall, fake dog burger stall like that, and then when people come up in rage, going, "Well, what's the difference?" Because what happens, sometimes at these kind of dog rescue events is there will be a burger bar there selling, beef, and there'll be a pork bap. Someone selling pork baps, and they will have stuff like that because they don't make the connection. But the reason we're there is to kind of help people to make the connection, really. I mean, in terms of stuff that's kind of not at all out in the world, there's stuff there's stuff that obviously can be done online. One thing I'm kind of wary of, though, with online stuff is I think we've got to be careful of kind of just talking to the vegans and finding a way of getting out of the vegan bubble in a sense. And I think if someone's got a lot of non-vegan friends, like me, I've got hardly any non-vegan friends because I've been vegan so long that they've all kind of they've kind of gone. But someone that's newly vegan and that's still got a lot of non-vegan friends, I think that there's there's ways that those people can kind of be educated on social media by posting that. But I think the important thing is kind of to do it in a measured way. That because I think what happens is when somebody becomes vegan, there's kind of, oh my god, how terrible it is! I'm going to put loads of posts of animals being slaughtered on my social media, and immediately all the non-vegan things, right? I'm going to kind of unfriend you, or I'm going to mute you. So kind of the thing to do is to kind of only do stuff like that every so often, and kind of not to do graphic things and to do stuff that's kind of more subtle. That people will actually, because there's no point putting something on there that somebody's not going to look. They're going, I'm not watching that. And like going back to the kind of the advertising we do on social media, and that's another thing people could look into, although it's a bit more complicated and is, does cost a bit, is we don't really use anything graphic at all, because we want people to watch what we're putting on there. It tends to be poignant rather than graphic, in the sense that it's kind of moving, but without like blood and guts type stuff. It's that sort of thing. And I think it's that kind of level where people will watch and be moved, but they won't like just switch off because they just go, oh my God, that's
right. Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying there's not a place for graphic stuff, but I think, if it's to do with, you've got friends on social media, so followers, and you want them to carry on, looking at what you've got on there. If you put something like that, they go, right, I'm going to not.
They'll mute, or exactly.
Mute, so that's a way that I think people, but that's kind of only really if people have got a lot of friends that kind of aren't vegan, which a lot of new vegans will have.
Yeah, totally.
So that's probably a way that new vegans can kind of do it. So yes, really, there's a whole array of different ways in which people can spread the message, from simple ways to kind of more complicated, whatever appeals to people, really.
But I would even go ahead and expand that a little bit myself to encourage people that if you're charismatic, and you don't have to believe you're charismatic, by the way, but if people tell you you're charismatic, if people tell you, oh, you're really good at talking, if you hear this kind of stuff a lot, chances are you could start like a channel, like a YouTube channel, an Instagram channel, and to put yourself out there as like a I don't want to use the word influencer because it's cringe, but like, as this kind of build up some kind of reach on social media, give people, you could create content for other people to share with their non-vegan friends, if that's something that you feel you could do. Obviously it's not for everyone, but that's the route I took, for example. And it's a route a lot of people take in today's world with, I don't use TikTok because I just, the app's just an absolute disgrace. But I mean, if you're into TikTok, that's the easiest way to just, create easy content. There's Instagram Reels, there's YouTube Shorts. I mean, YouTube is pushing shorts so hard right now that if you start creating a channel with YouTube Shorts and they're good quality and they're good messages, you could be reaching like millions of people very quickly. Now the benefit with YouTube Shorts is they are showing non-vegans that stuff. It's not like they would just show vegans your stuff. They show it to just thousands of random people. But again, vegans could share your things to their non-vegan friends, and then that's the way you could work. So I mean, if that's what you're into, if you back yourself, then that's also, I'd recommend giving that a go. I can tell you that's what I did, and so far I don't regret it.
I think it's whatever skills people have got is kind of to use those, and whatever appeals to people, because we tend to be best at what we like doing.
100%. 100%. I totally
so kind of think about what you like doing and how that can be turned into outreach.
Yeah.
The other thing is designing. People that can maybe design a website or something like that, and say to approach a vegan group, something like, would you like me to do a website for you, or would you like me to kind of design flyers for you and stuff like that. There's a real lack of people with those skills. So any skills that you have, or abilities, or things that you're keen on that you can bring to the struggle. Definitely. I think everyone's got a place in their own way to do stuff.
100%. That's great advice, and people really listen to that, take that in, rewind and play it again if you missed it. It's so important. We've got another question from Ronnie is a legend, who sent this question. They tipped $5 as well. Thank you. They say, go on, mate. Did you want to respond to that? Ronnie is a legend.
I was going to say, I remember being at I went to an animal rights march in Manchester a few years ago with my wife, Louise, and I gave a speech there. And afterwards, there was quite a lot of young people, and she was sitting next to me, and they were coming up going, "Oh, hi, Ronnie, you're a legend." And she was there going, "He's a bellend." And people were so shocked, thinking, "Who's this woman that's kind of said this terrible thing?" Until I pointed out it was my wife, and then they totally understood.
That's funny. That's good banter.
It is. It's this kind of relationship we've got, But yeah. So that's funny. Awesome. So what was
the question? The question actually a personal question. What kind of music do you like? Any favorite artists? Thank you for everything.
Oh well, let's see. That's well. Thank you so much anyway for that. And I kind of I kind of got really into. I don't listen to a huge amount of. I mean, one of my very really favourite more recent stuff now is like, well, it's not quite. There's a number by a guy called Vanquish Evil. I think it might be him and his brother actually.
Okay.
From Sweden, and they've done something called Let the Animals Live, and I'd say look that up on YouTube. Okay. It's a fantastic, it's a beautiful song, about animal liberation, veganism, stuff like that. Okay. It's like really, really lovely number, and that's probably one of my very, very favourites at the moment. Cool. If I was to say, like, kind of apart from that, now what are my kind of three probably favorite songs or whatever?
So like Beyonce, Justin Bieber, and Backstreet Boys,
no,
right?
None of them. No, there would be "The Partisan" by Leonard Cohen.
Okay,
which is a song about French resistance.
Okay,
it's taken from a traditional song, and he revamped it. There's one called "Shake Some Action" by a band called the Flaming Groovies, which kind of came out in the early 70s. Cool. And what used to happen was it was kind of our anthem for when I was involved in like an ALF group in North London. Before we'd go out on a raid, we'd put this on the vinyl of it on the record player. Okay. Shake Some Action by the Flaming Groovies.
Cool.
And another one I like is Fields of Athenry. By the Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, okay. That's the one. That's what I recognise out of
Fields of Athenry is about the Irish potato famine and the guy that was put in jail for, stealing corn for feed his child.
Cool.
But what's happened is that it was kind of more like a folky song, but the Dropkick Murphys have turned it into more of a punky version.
Okay.
And kind of those are probably, if I had to name 3 or 4. My favorite numbers, that's kind of what I would. I mean, all of them, none of them are like particularly like right bang up to date now.
Right.
I mean, I got really into the punk back in the 70s. I remember being in jail and reading this stuff about the punks, and it sounded like they were horrible, spitting at people and all that. Right. And I thought, well, they're awful, And I came out, a friend of mine, Gary had been in jail. He'd been in jail a couple of times as well for ALF stuff. But like, kind of, he said, "Oh, have you heard any of this punk stuff?" I said, "Oh, I don't want to hear that. They're horrible people." He said, "No, listen to some. I said, "All right." And he played the Ramones, and I was blown away. I thought, "That's fantastic."
Oh yeah, nice.
So I got really into the punk scene, and we used to go to punk gigs. And the Clash, I saw the Clash probably about 6 or 7 times when we were playing in North London. The Jam in the early days, Damned, Buzzcocks,
cool.
Sham 69, all these different bands that were around at the time. I like the Clash. I was a big fan of the Clash. But the funny thing was, I never used to dress it. All my mates used to dress in punk gear, and they'd have all the stuff, and I'd just go in just all like an old bomber jacket and stuff, and people looking at me thinking I was at the wrong gig because I never dressed as a punk. And then in the kind of late 70s, I was in a punk band. I was a singer,
right,
in a punk band called ourselves Total Attack, and we were all people from Hunt Sabs or ALF, and we used to. A lot of our numbers were about animal liberation,
awesome,
and
mate.
stuff. That only lasted a couple of years, but it was like good.
But were you?
It was good fun.
Were you ever part of the? There was like a vegan straight edge hardcore scene that came and went. Were you ever part of that?
Yeah, no, we weren't part of that.
Okay.
I mean, we weren't straight edge.
Right.
I'd probably say I'm straight edge now. I mean, now these days I don't drink and smoke, but I wasn't straight edge then.
Yeah, because it became part of the purity, didn't it? Kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, it kind of was. Yeah. That I think. Possibly that came a little bit later than when perhaps that was into the 80s a little bit, because we were only going a couple of years, kind of at the end of the 70s.
Right.
Our band, and our drummer we did a number at a gig. It was our drummer had got us this gig at a festival in a park, and it was quite prestigious to get on the stage, and he managed to wangle it, and we were on there. We did, you know, quite a lot of our songs were controversial, and one of them, I think the second number we did, people started throwing eggs at us.
Right.
See? And I kind of made a joking comment. I was there, said, "I hope there's a free range." Although really, that's only a vegetarian joke, isn't it? You know what I should have said is, "Please throw tofu," which would have been a vegan joke. But anyway, some of them hit this guy's drums, the drummer, and he jumped off the stage, ran in the crowd, chased after the guy, and then he came back. He said, "Right, I'm not in this band anymore." He said, "I'm not in this band to have eggs thrown at my drums." And once he left, it kind of sort of really kind of fell apart.
Yeah,
after that.
happens, right?
There we are. So eggs destroyed our band. Animal products destroy vegan band. That would have been a good headline, wouldn't it, in the music paper.
That's a shame, man. It's a shame, and it's. I've been in a band before as well, and you know, once. Yeah, one thing falls, like one member goes, it can.
It kind of. We got another drummer, but it's
not the same.
Never was really the same again. And then we all kind of went into it. But it was kind of good fun. And we're actually on YouTube. If people go on YouTube and look up, it's a guy called the guy whose channel it is a guy called Alex Punks. Alex Punks, Punx. I think he's a Spanish friend of mine, and he's got. Go on his channel and look up Total Attack, and he's posted like kind of 5 of our. We went in a recording studio and laid down some numbers, and that kind of survived, and he's put that on there. There's 5 of our numbers on there. If anyone wants to listen to the kind of stuff
awesome.
We came out with,
awesome. It's cool, mate. It's cool. I'll check that out because I like. I'm into like alternative, like I guess you could call it alternative music. My main stuff's like metalcore, like very heavy, kind of screamy, lots of breakdowns. But I also like the. I like the old punk stuff as well. I don't put it on, but when it's on, I'm like, I'll check. So I'll check it out, man.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. No, yeah. So I mean, it was kind of okay, and we, you know, we enjoyed it, and we did a few. I think our biggest venue I think we did a gig at Hammersmith Town Hall in London, which was this fundraiser for Rock Against Blood Sports. It was they used to have, because remember there used to be Rock Against Racism and all that, and there was also Rock Against Blood Sports where people did gigs to raise money for the Hunt Sabs, and that was that one, and that was pretty good.
Cool, man.
You know.
Cool. Yeah, so I can tell you, by the way, I just want to tell everybody watching that the chat kind of reset and I can't get to your earlier messages. So if you sent questions in the chat, I've warned you, if you really want a question to be answered, you're gonna have to do it by Streamlabs because there's limitations to what I can see and what I can do. But if you send questions in the chat right now, I'll try, because we've gone through all of the Streamlabs questions. So if you want to send questions in the chat right now, I'm just absolutely not spam the chat, but pop all your questions in there. I'll pick the ones that are most interesting. They won't be in any order. But again, to guarantee it, you're going to have to do the Streamlabs tip. And bear in mind that we've not got Ronnie for like 5 hours, right? I don't know, Ronnie. I don't know when you were planning on finishing up today, but I guess...
I don't mind as long as it takes.
Yeah, all right, cool. Okay, ignore Ronnie. It's not right. We've got a limited time, okay, guys?
Yeah.
But yeah, we can't be here for like 10 hours or something. So you're gonna have to. If you really want a question to be answered, you're gonna have to do the tip. Otherwise, I'll glance the chat and see if there's anything interesting now. There was a question actually from someone called Kath YouTube, who says, do you see any value in hunt sabs dressing up like hunt scum when out on a hunt? That's an interesting question.
Sometimes, yes. I mean, we used to. It depends on the situation. What we used to do when I was involved in, I ran a sab group. This is in the 1970s, when I lived in Luton, and I had a little Mini, and we used to all ram into the Mini because that's when the Minis were really little cars, and we'd go off sabbing, but sometimes we'd decide to kind of go up against like a hunt that kind of had a particularly violent reputation, and there might only be a couple of us.
Right.
And what we used to do, we used to pretend to be hunt supporters.
Right.
And we'd sometimes dress up in the stuff, you see. And what we'd do is we would kind of mingle with the hunt supporters, and they go, "Who are you then?" And we'd say, "Oh, we're supporters of another hunt, but we've come here today." And they'd be all, "Oh, welcome," and all that. And then what we would do is we would pretend we'd seen a fox, because what they do is these hunt supporters that they're kind of around the edge of the field, they're kind of on the road looking over the hedge or whatever, the gate, and they're round by where the hunt are. And if they see a fox, they'll holler. One of them, put their cap in the air and go woo like that. It's and then point in the direction of the fox, and then the huntsman will put the hounds on to go and look for the fox. And of course, if there is really no fox there, it wastes loads of their time. And so that's what we used to do. We used to get in with these hunt supporters, chatting to them and that, because of course we knew about other hunts, because we'd saved the other hunts, because we knew about those other hunts anyway, and we pretended to be supporters of those, and we knew about them. Oh yeah,
right.
Chatting away, and then we'd pretend we'd seen a fox, and we'd holler, and then what would happen is, in order to bring kudos to themselves, some of these other guys, even though they hadn't seen the fox, they'd holler as well.
God.
You see,
amazing.
Because the master's seen me holler, he'll think it was all that,
Yeah.
And then they'd spend hours looking for not necessarily hours, but a long time, putting the hounds all around looking for a non-existent fox. And so you can, by dressing up
brilliant.
as them and pretending to be them, you can do stuff, and we did used to do that sometimes. Yeah,
that's funny, man. I like that.
Yeah,
it's like a high IQ hunt sabbing, isn't it? It's like, well, if you don't even have to do anything dangerous there. Just rock up and pretend you support.
But I'll tell you a really funny story about hunt sabs. We had a hunt sab group, and we were sat round. It was at our meeting, and one of the guys in the group came in, and he was like very upset. He'd been out of work for a long time, and he just got a job working at a pub. And he said, I can't believe it. He said, the hunts are going to meet at our pub, and they want me to be involved in, like, they give them stirrup cups to drink, the pub do. They sit on their horses drinking this. I'm not quite sure what's in it. Some kind of spirit. I don't know, it's brandy or something they drink before they go off. And he said, I don't know what to do, because, if I refuse, I'll lose my job. I've only just got the job. And I thought for a minute, I said, tell you what to do. I'll get you some liquid laxative.
Right.
So I got him some liquid laxative, and I said, what you want to do is, when you do, just a bit of that in each thing. Anyway, he came back the next minute. He came back. He was all like really buoyant. He said, it was brilliant.
Oh my God.
He said they all shat. The hunt had to be called off.
Mental.
Because he put the stuff in and they drank it. He said one of them, you could see it running off his boot as he kind of drove. It just completely like wrecked there. And so there are these alternative ways of, if anyone works in a pub and the hunt meets there, that's what to do. Get some liquid laxative in the stirrup cup.
And that is mental, isn't it?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like some kind of like comedy or something, sketch, but it actually really happened.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Yeah,
but
it's sometimes kind of thinking outside the box.
Right,
sometimes
right. Of course.
Kind of, we often think to act in like a kind of directly confrontational way. In other words, they're hunting, we're going to go, and there's this like kind of direct clash with them, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's kind of good. That happens a lot, but then sometimes you got to think of like approaching it a different way, and like one way of like doing it is pretending to be their friend, either pretending to be a hunt sporter or pretending to be a nice guy, nice person, giving them a stirrup cup that's got liquid laxative in, and there's this different way, other ways, alternative sabotage.
You see, guys, there are so many ways you can fight for animals.
With laxative, you
got laxatives, you've got, whatever floats your boat, guys, whatever you could get your hands on. That's brilliant, mate. We've got a great question here, and this next question kind of glosses over a point, so we're going to have to first of all answer the one question, then get to the question. This is from Michael Askew, donated $15. Thank you so much. Tipped $15. And he says, how difficult was it while you were in prison to get vegan food, and how were you treated? Thanks, Ronnie and David. Now, first of all, we need to tell people why you were even in prison and how long were you in prison for. Let's go through that.
Well, what happened was, very quickly, how kind of it all started, my kind of journey towards prison and in prison and all that was, when I was in hunt sabs, there's a form of hunting called cub hunting, which is carried out in the early part of the hunting season, around about August,
Okay.
where basically the idea is to give the young hounds a taste of blood. And what they do is basically they don't have a chase where they chase after a fox, and that's really where the hunt sabs come in, trying to kind of disrupt the chase.
Okay.
What they do is they send all the hounds into a wood and massacre the fox cubs. And it's really difficult to sabotage because there's no chase, and also all the hunt are there. So if you tried to physically intervene, you'd be kind of massively outnumbered and kind of pummeled to death, probably. And we'd be turning up at these things and being and totally helpless. And so I started thinking, and some others started thinking, well, what can we do about this? And a few of us started kind of forming the idea of really some other sort of sabotage we can do to kind of stop them. And it ended up with there was 6 of us had a meeting in. I remember us being huddled in the corner of a basement cafe in London, discussing this. And we decided that what we needed to do was to go to the hunt kennels in the early hours of the morning before one of these cub hunts and sabotage their vehicles so they couldn't go, you see. But we couldn't do that as the hunt sabs because the hunt sabs did try to keep within the law. So we knew we had to form a different organisation. So we decided to form a group called the Band of Mercy. And it sounds a strange name, but it was the name of an RSPCA youth group, or there was a number of youth groups with that name back in the 18th century when the RSPCA, or was it 19th century when the RSPCA was formed. And they were quite militant. They would damage guns that the shooters were going to use and stuff like that. So we thought, we were wondering what we call ourselves. Thought, why not call ourselves that? Because that's what we're going to do, you know. And so that's what we called ourselves at first, was the Band of Mercy. And we went out and we started doing these things at the hunt kennels, and we did a couple of us caused damage to 2 boats that were going to be used for seal hunting. Okay. They used to do kill baby seals on the wash, for their fur. This was the fisher, some fishermen were involved in this. And then we tried to destroy a laboratory that's been built at Milton Keynes while it's been constructed and stuff like that, and various things. And it ended up with a couple of us getting arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Okay.
We were in prison for 12 months. And when I come out of jail, there were so many more people wanting to get involved. I was so pleasantly surprised. I thought that's going to put people off. We were sent to prison. But it kind of didn't. There was all these, especially young people, saying, I want to do the same thing. How do I get involved? And so we got, there's a big increase in numbers. And the name was changed to the Animal Liberation Front because people thought Band of Mercy didn't mention animals. It sounded like some kind of religious organisation. People didn't like the name. So Animal Liberation Front was kind of said what it was, So the name got changed, and that was in 1976. And then it carried on from there, and, lots more action, and, we started rescuing animals in large numbers as well because we had more people. And then I got put in jail again. I got a 12-month sentence for a raid on a place that bred mice for experiments. And then I came out from that one, and I kind of sort of became press officer for the Animal Liberation Front. And then in 1986, I got arrested again on conspiracy charges. And I ended up getting a 10-year sentence for conspiracy to cause criminal damage and inciting people to damage places and that kind of thing. So that's kind of, that's my prison history, the kind of 3.
Wait. How much of that sentence did you actually serve?
Of the 10-year sentence, it was 6 years and 8 months. At the time, you did 2/3 of the sentence. My total amount of time spent in prison added together is probably about 9 years, and you add it all up.
But I can't believe 6.
Yeah,
that's mental. Like you served almost 7 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some people have served more than that since, but that was the longest sentence at the time, and I was actually told to expect 15 years. So I was quite pleased when I got 10 years. I was going, yes, like that in the dock when the judge sentenced me, and people were thinking, what? He's kind of got 10 years and he's going like that. But I thought I'd get 15 years. So it was a kind of result, And basically it kind of changed when I first got put in prison on that, when I got the 3 years way back in, that was in 1975. they didn't even know what vegans were. When I went in there and said, look, I'm a vegan, can I have a vegan diet? They said, well, what's a vegan? I explained to them, said, no, you can't have that. You've got to you'll have the vegetarian diet, and you'll just have to eat what you can out of the vegetarian food.
Right.
See, because if you're a vegetarian, you got a vegetarian diet, or if you're a Jew or a Muslim, you'd get what was appropriate to their religion in food, like they wouldn't have pork and stuff like that. But they didn't recognise vegans, and I thought, well, that's no good. So I went on hunger strike, and I was on hunger strike for 10 days, and I got moved to another prison where there was a hospital. I got put in the hospital. And then the guy that was the prison officer that's head of the kitchen, he came to see me and said, listen, we've decided to give you a vegan diet, and I need to talk to you about it. It can't be anything expensive, but let's work out a menu with you. So I sat with him, worked out this menu. It was kind of mostly beans and lentils. It was like, very basic, it wasn't anything expensive, but it was fine. It was, I was happy with it. It was nutritionally adequate. And so like I kind of won that right, but I only won that right really for me. And that kind of followed me round as I went to different prisons. They gave me a vegan diet. But if another vegan had gone in another animal rights prison, they'd have had to go through the same thing as I did. It only applied to individual. And then eventually the Vegan Society, and there was another group called the Vegan Prisoner Support Group, kind of got involved in campaigning towards the government. And eventually they kind of got a right for, first of all, it started off that they gained the right that if somebody was a member of the Vegan Society and could produce a Vegan Society membership card, they were entitled to a vegan diet. You see, that's how. Okay, so that was right. You had to be a card carrying. That's funny. And what happened was, I mean, the Vegan Society actually became the biggest criminal organisation in the world because what happened was all these ordinary criminals, because the vegan diet was actually better. It was nicer food because prison food gets cooked en masse, but the vegan, because there's fewer vegans, it's more
going to be special.
Carefully cooked, special. And plus you used to get a goodie bag because when they made tea in prison, the milk was already in it.
Right.
So what they did with vegans, they gave you tea bags and they gave you soya milk, and then you'd get peanut butter. You get this goodie bag full of stuff to supplement what wasn't part of the diet. Yeah. And so what prisoners do, they'd sell stuff out of this bag for tobacco, which is the currency in prison. And so it was kind of a lot of like the ordinary criminals thought, oh great, I'll go on the vegan diet and I'll get all these benefits. And so they joined the Vegan Society to get the card, and they'd go and present it. There'd be a big gangster guy with a scar down his face and go, here's my, and they go, you're not vegan. You go, yes, I am. I got the card. And they'd have to give him that, they'd have to give him the diet. So that there was so many like these kind of ordinary crims that become, they didn't become vegan. They weren't vegan. They didn't believe in veganism, but they wanted the Vegan Society card, and then they had to have the diet.
And then they come in, and then they meet you, and then you'd actually make them vegan.
Well, there was a case, actually. There was a case where I had this discussion with the guy, and he was like totally anti-vegan. And, was discussing it for a while. He was in for, I don't know, he was in burglary or something. And anyway, and in the end, we had to agree to differ. He said, I'm never going to be vegan, whatever you say. And I said, well, I've got to do something else now. I'll have to end this conversation. But I didn't row with him. I wasn't nasty to him. I stayed calm. I was trying to, but, he was adamant. And then on my next prison sentence, on a later prison sentence, I met him again. And he came up to me, he says, hello, remember me? Remember we had that discussion? I said, oh, yeah. He says, I've been vegan now for 2 years. Wow. He went vegan.
Amazing.
Vegan for, it was longer than that. It was only like shortly after he'd had the discussion with me. And I said, oh, what happened? He said, well, I thought about afterwards. He said, I thought about what you said. He said, I know at the time I disagreed with you, but I thought about what you said and I decided that you were right and I become vegan. And so this is why it was so important that I wasn't nasty to him and I didn't tell him to fuck off or anything. Because if I'd done that, he wouldn't have considered what I'd had to say.
Of course.
But because I remained calm and polite with him, he enabled him to think about it. I mean, he was still a criminal, but he's
a vegan criminal now.
He's a vegan criminal, yeah.
Get him to join the ALF.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. He could do criminality in a useful way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then eventually, it got even better because with the vegan diet, because because then they removed the need to have the vegan card,
Right.
which was obviously a loss to the vegan society because they didn't have all this money from the criminal return. They didn't have this kind of laundered money. They would launder their money through joining the vegan society.
So
funny. But that's better because it should be, people, like somebody that was Jewish didn't have to have a card from the rabbi saying I'm Jewish, I need a vegan diet, a Jewish diet. So, it's wrong that vegan, and so I believe that's the same now. I mean, it's many years since I've been in jail, but hopefully that's the same now.
You'll have to go back and have a look, mate. You'll have to.
I have to go back, and I don't really much fancy. I was talking to somebody the other day, a vegan friend who works as a social worker in a prison, and it's like horrific. Because a load of them are privatized and they cut everything right to the basic because it's profit orientated, and shit. It's terrible.
Right.
And like I wouldn't really go back now, to be quite honest, but in terms of the food, I found the food okay, and I found as time went on it improved, and I had no complaints. I mean, one thing that prisoners constantly complain about is the food, but they probably, most of them are having to actually, you talk about all the prisoners, and they're obviously on a, the meat diet and that, but they're actually getting a more nutritious diet in prison than they would outside because they have to, because although it's very simple and cheap, it has to meet certain, or it did back then, I don't know now, it had to meet certain nutritional standards. And so they were getting, like a balanced meal, whereas outside you probably ate junk.
Yeah.
But they complain all the time, oh, this food shit, and all that. But I never complained. I thought it's all right. I thought this is really quite nice. So the diet, it wasn't a problem, and I was allowed to get vegan toiletries sent in to me and soap and stuff like that. So it wasn't too bad. I mean, it takes a while to set up, and of course in the beginning I had to fight for it, but
it's starve for it.
But it was kind of starve for it, but it was okay. Yeah.
And over that's 7 years. That's like, I mean, you glossed over it. You're just kind of 7 years, but that's a long fucking time, mate. That
well, it's not. It was 7. That was a 7-year sentence, but when you add up everything.
Sure. But I mean, 7 in a row, mate. 7 in a row.
It's kind of I mean, it was a long time, and I kind of I got into studying. And in many ways, that it kind of might have almost saved my life, actually, that prison sentence, because I wasn't healthy.
Okay.
My diet was pretty healthy, but the rest of my lifestyle wasn't.
Right.
I was a smoker, not a heavy smoker, but I did smoke. And I was overweight. I didn't really get any exercise.
Okay.
But when I went in jail, when I got that 10, it was the 10-year sentence. I thought, right, I've got to get some of the years back. I've got to get myself fit. So I lost weight. I kind of, cut down on, stuff like salt and sugar. I stopped smoking. I started running, started exercising. And so, if it hadn't been for that, would I be here today? Would I still be smoking?
Right.
So there's always that.
Right.
And that kind of, so in a way it motivated me, like they've stolen these years off me. I'm going to win some of them back by getting fit. Right. So I can live longer.
Come out better than you went in.
So that kind, yeah. And I've kind of maintained that really.
That's awesome.
Since, so there's a sense that it might possibly have been a lifesaver. You don't know, but certainly I'm a lot fitter. A lot fitter. I mean, when I started running, I could hardly run. So I was running around the football field. I did like one lap around the football field the first time, and I pretty much collapsed. I was so unfit, But eventually, I could run miles. I got myself up to a level of fitness.
That's awesome, mate. So I guess what the moral of the story is, guys, if you're currently not feeling too healthy, you've not got a good lifestyle, join the ALF. Go and do some activities. Get arrested.
Get yourself a big sentence and get yourself fit. That's what I did, because of course you haven't got these, you can't kind of focus on that because you haven't got so much distractions,
right?
And you're not busy with other things in there. I mean, I kept busy. I mean, I learned foreign languages because I wanted to communicate with people from other countries, animal rights people from other countries, and although a lot of them knew English, there were quite a few that didn't. And so I thought it'd be nice to be able to communicate with these people that I can't at present. And so I kind of learned French, German, Spanish, and Italian.
Mm-hmm.
I've forgotten a lot of it now. I mean, I can kind of read it. It's just speaking; it's more difficult. And that was great, and it was interesting, and it kept me busy, and that's how I just once again it was a formula, keep busy, and the other guys in there couldn't understand it because I'd be studying and I'd be studying for exams and stuff, and I'd be up late at night, I'd be up until midnight, possibly after midnight, studying. And other guys thought I was mad. They were going, "You're serving extra prison. If you were asleep, if you slept through that time, you're not in prison because you're asleep."
Right.
They go, because they call it bird. You're doing extra bird.
Okay.
By staying awake late,
Right.
and doing all, that's how they thought of it.
Right.
Because most of them used to try and sleep as much as they could.
To get it to
because then they're not,
right?
then they're kind of not in jail,
course,
But I used to think, well, I don't want to. I need to study, during this time, and that's what I did,
It's inspirational, mate. A lot of people would just go into like a self-loathing kind of like pity, self-pity. That's the one. Like, oh, woe is me, woe is me. I feel so bad, because it's pretty
they
shit.
would, but I was thought about the animals. I thought no matter how bad it is for me, and to be honest, it kind of wasn't that bad. No matter the worst thing about being in prison is not being outside.
Right. Okay.
That's kind of I felt. I mean, obviously, if you're in jail and you're chained to the wall or something, then it that's different. But certainly when I went to what happened when I don't know if it's the same now, but in those days when you first got put in prison, you got put in what was called a local prison. They have this thing that you got 3 guys in a cell and you're in a bucket to go to the toilet, and it was not like that now, I don't think, but it was then. It was not great. But then when you got moved to what they call a dispersal prison, where you serve your sentence, then the conditions were a lot better.
Right. Okay.
And obviously most of my time was spent in that kind of a prison. So I always thought, well, no matter how bad it is for me, it's think of how worse it is for the animals, in laboratories, that are being slaughtered or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I've got no right to complain about my condition because I always compared it to how they were, and that's how I kind of sort of put things into perspective, really.
Sure, I get that. That's inspirational. The whole it's a very inspirational segment of today's Q&A, mate. Absolutely. I think a lot of people are going to be hearing, some of these things for the first time. So I appreciate you giving us all that information.
But I think that's a good way for people to think anyway, because I think, we all have our own problems in kind of different ways. But I think sometimes people get things out of perspective and they put their own problems in the perspective of what's happening to other animals. Then I'm not saying that makes their own problems kind of any less, but it does enable you to think about that in a kind of measured way. And often the way I find a way of kind of, I would say that, doing vegan outreach and stuff like that has kind of definitely helped with my mental health because it takes a focus away from yourself. Your focus is on doing something for these other, for these other beings that are so much in a much worse situation than you could possibly ever be in.
Definitely.
And so your focus is on them. It takes focus away from yourself and away from your own problems. And I think that can be helpful. That can be helpful to mental health. And I've found it definitely.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It's like we said earlier. It gets you out of your own head for some time, right? And you can and
I think that's I think that I kind of think that's important, and I think people can sink into this thing about so much focus on themselves and their own problems that it gets into kind of a spiral, and people kind of can get dragged down, and you kind of focus outside of that on something outside, some good you can do outside, and it's kind of that's not only helpful to the other animals that you're kind of seeking to protect, it's also helpful to yourself.
Oh, for sure. We have another question from Live Cruelty Free now, a follow-up from the previous question. They say, thank you for the earlier advice, Ronnie and David, and thank you for the tip, by the way, $5. What organizations have the best pamphlets to leave in places or to put on cars that aren't PETA pamphlets? I don't want to promote or refer people to PETA, even though their pamphlets are good.
Well, I would say, I mean, I don't often use PETA stuff anyway, because I kind of, I would say Viva and Animal Aid.
Okay.
They're and one I use a lot, leaving pamphlets on card. And I mean, it kind of depends on what country the person's in as well, because obviously whatever country people, they've got different organisations in other countries that I wouldn't really know about. But certainly, like in the UK, Viva and Animal Aid are the ones that I tend to get the leaflets from, and give them a call and they'll send you them for nothing quite often. Even if you have to buy them from Viva, sometimes they're not massively expensive, really, and I think it kind of does really only covers their costs. But one really good one I use, Animal Aid do one that's called Friend or Food, and it's a green leaflet, like one open out one, and it's got a picture of a piglet and a puppy on the front, and it's all about, well, you know, you love one and eat the other type of thing. It's that theme, and that's really useful. Like I said, we do these stalls at these kind of dog rescue shows, and that I always make sure everyone gets one of those leaflets.
Good one.
Animal Aid do a really good booklet called Plant-Based Cooking on a Budget.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound at all like animal rightsy or militant, but the thing is, it's like a kind of Trojan horse or whatever is the. Is Trojan? Are we allowed to say Trojan horse is vegan?
I think, yeah.
I suppose we can. Yeah, it was wooden. It was a wooden horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a kind of real one. But it is because, you see, basically, it kind of, people won't be frightened of it because they think it's lovely recipes, and it is good. There's, you know, really affordable, lovely recipes in there. And so, but you see, towards the back of the booklet, it's all about the ethical reasons for veganism, what happens to the animals. Nothing graphic, but it explains. So it's a really good way of getting that information to people. And what I'll do is at those kind of dog rescue events, I'll put one of the other Friend or Food leaflets in the booklet, and so people get that as well. And also the other thing I do is where people have, you know, someone's parked in a car park, and people have a sticker on their car from like a dog rescue organisation or something. I'll put one of those leaflets under their windscreen wipers.
Right.
You see, okay, so okay. I did it the other day where someone, you know, a dog is for life, not for Christmas. You know, right. A lot of people have that and stuff like that, or they had a sticker from the local dog rescue right. Going under there. You know, I mean, it could be
That's smart.
Any kind of animal rescue, but because it's the dogs featured on that leaflet, it's particularly so stuff like that. Viva do some good ones. What Viva do that I like is they'll have these specific campaigns on different issues where they'll encourage people to order up leaflets. They got the latest one is kind of a more environmentally focused one about how kind of, you know, eating your beef burger is going to destroy wildlife. Yeah. You know, that's very, very good. They did one recently. We delivered thousands of them locally of their previous campaign, which was it was Save a Baby, and it was about babies really thrown to baby animals. It was all about how young animals are when they're slaughtered. People don't realise this. They're slaughtered at a tiny fraction of the natural lifespan, and it was about that, and that was a very good one for awareness. And so, Viva and Animal Aid, they're good for the different ones. But one thing, tip I give to people, if you're door dropping leaflets, avoid anything that's too graphic.
Right. Okay.
Because someone will come screaming out, "Oh, my kid!" Right. You know, and it's kind of maybe you don't need stuff that's massively graphic to get people thinking.
Right.
You know, and so that's the thing to kind of be wary of. Like, and quite often you can go on their website and see a PDF of the leaflets and see what you get in. So it's always a good idea to do. We've been doing an anti-dairy this month. We're focusing on delivering anti-dairy leaflets like Scary Dairy from Viva, and Animal Aid have got one called This Little Calf. And the reason for that is because, you know, Animal Rebellion did the stuff, and it got publicity about dairy. And so we thought, well, people will maybe have already seen that, and so we kind of want to. And we had an article in our because what happened, because my wife locked herself to a steering wheel of a lorry blocking an entrance to it. You could see part of an animal rebellion.
Right.
And I did a press release about it to the local paper, and it got in there, and that was good publicity about against the dairy industry, because it mentioned the cows and calves that are killed as well. It wasn't just about the environment, the press release. And then, as a follow-up, someone in our local vegan group wrote a letter to the paper with some more information, about that, the fishing industry as well. You see, so that's another thing people can do. And, previous question about what else people could do. It's still useful writing letters to your local newspaper, because although, local newspapers aren't as popular anymore because of the internet, they're still there, and you still get areas where thousands of local newspapers get delivered free. We've got one in our area, probably gets delivered to about 30,000 houses.
Right.
And that article went and that letter went in all of those. So those people, it's like almost equivalent to delivering leaflets to that, that number of residences. And it's always worth, looking in your local paper for something, for an article that you can hang a letter in, if they have a letters page, that you can kind of hang a letter on that's promoting veganism.
Right.
And kind of, because you're more likely to, if your letter refers to something that's already been in the newspaper, you've got a better chance of getting it published.
Yep.
And that's the thing that, very, very few people do, but we're very on that. And we've got a little group of people that they'll either write letters or they're prepared to kind of put their name to letters. And sometimes I'll, because if it's the same person writing a letter all the time,
right,
they're going to think, well, he had a letter last week, he's not going to get another one, So you have different people, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to write it. That somebody who's a good letter writer can just say, well, can I use your name and your address and your email address and write a letter, or do it on your behalf? You can do it that way. But even if you haven't, there's not a group of you, every so often you could, write a letter promoting veganism.
Yeah.
And the other good thing is always put a web link in the letter. I often put a link to the Vegan Society, or maybe to Viva or something like that, or perhaps Animal Aid, where people can go on a website and learn more.
Okay.
And that's another thing people can do that's not going out on the street.
Right, it's low effort. It's a low effort, and it's funny how it's outside the box now. It's outside the box thinking to send letters to newspapers. Even though not so long ago that was the way, right?
I mean, the other thing is I've got loads of templates for letters on different things.
Okay.
If anyone's interested in doing letters to newspapers, so they want to get in touch with me, I can kind of send them these different templates, and they can just tailor it. Because I kind of use that anyway.
Yeah.
That there's these different templates, and you just tailor it a little bit to the kind of, the situation. It saves you kind of writing a whole letter from scratch.
Cool.
And I mean, there's a guy that he's kind of writes letters on an environmental slant about adopting a vegan diet, and kind of his letters are almost all the same, and he just changes a bit at the top. The way it refers to, and they nearly always get published, because it's like sends them every few months, and that they get in there, so you can do that. And that, that's another way. And any of these things that I've spoken about, if people want help or advice on any of it, then get in touch with me. Maybe you can, I don't know whether that can go in the description or something, people can kind of and I'm more than willing to kind of help people with any whether it's the outreach, the door dropping the stalls, whether it's the advertising, or if it's the letters, any of those things. Because I want to encourage people to do this everywhere. I want outreach to happen everywhere, not just in the centre of big cities, but if you live in a little, in a sleepy town somewhere, 20, 30,000 population, there's loads of stuff you can do there to get people to go vegan.
Totally.
Really loads of stuff. And I think that's kind of what, it's this community, what I'd call community outreach, in a sense that you're kind of trying to focus on a more local community to get people to go vegan. And I think kind of we need this, because massively across the country, there's loads of communities that aren't really getting the message, or they're not getting the message enough.
Sure.
So, and we need to do something about that.
Well, hopefully today a lot of people have taken that inspiration as well. And you know, when you come on the channel again at some point, which I'm sure you will,
Yes.
yeah, I have an idea for that actually. I'll tell you later on. But
Great,
yeah,
yeah.
I've got an idea for something that we could do.
That'd be really. I'm always keen to kind of promote this because I see it's key.
Mm-hmm.
I see it's key. I think if we're going to achieve animal liberation,
Mm.
we have got we've got to change ordinary people, because you know, if we are in a society where the you know the vast majority of people kind of don't believe in animal liberation, where they're not vegan, how are we ever really going to get anywhere very much? We're not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we've got to kind of change, like, sort of the way people think, you know, social attitudes. And kind of the only way you do that is kind of through education in one way or another. It's like through raising awareness, really.
Absolutely.
And that can be done in all sorts of ways, and we can all do it. And if we all do it, we can really get it. Just mobilizing this, we've got this massive potential, all these vegans now, this huge potential that can be mobilized to really, you know, I think could fairly rapidly bring about like a situation where we've got massive, where things are massively better for other animals than we've got now.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. And yeah, all we can do is keep on trying to encourage people to give
You've
it a
got
go.
to keep on going.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's difficult because often, you know, I'll say things and they kind of won't, you know, there's not really a response to it, and you have to keep trying. But I think eventually that will happen. And there's kind of tipping points where once a certain number of people adopt an idea, then that rapidly increases. And I think that we've kind of seen that a little bit, or perhaps more than a little bit with veganism, or certainly people adopting a vegan diet. That's the more people that do it, then that suddenly increases rapidly, because people see it as easier. People see it as like that they're no longer like a weirdo.
Yeah.
Because there's other people that are vegan and, you know, stuff like that. And I think it's kind of to do with that, really.
Things have changed a lot, and they will hopefully continue to. And so we have before we wrap up, we just have two more tips to go over. One is just a statement, and they're just plugging themselves, so I'll just read it out because it's thank you for the $5 tip. Just says shout out to Kraken Visuals. He's a vegan animator who dropped an animation where elderly people are treated how we treat farm animals. Very eye-opening and shocking, and there's a link. So yeah, thank you for that.
That'd be great. I mean that is the sort of thing that we would probably use, depending on the length and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It sounds pretty cool.
We would use as one of our adverts.
Cool. Well, I'll forward
stuff like that.
I'll forward you that later then.
Because it's, you know, we kind of use videos, you know, video, you know, short video ads and anything like that. I mean that seems really good.
Right, so Avocado for Life. That was a smart move. Plugging your video there. Good one. Now Ronnie might use it. And we have one more from Once We're Good. Now I need to warn you here, mate. You don't need to answer the first part of this question. This is up to you. Okay.
I probably will.
Well, I don't know actually. I don't know if you will. So let me read it out. Don't make promises you don't keep, mate.
No. I'm not promising. All
right. It's Mr. Lee. Except your spouse, who is the most beautiful female vegan in the world, according to you? That's the first part of the question. Second part, also, how do you handle people bullying vegans? So you are more than welcome to skip the first question and answer the second one. Up to you.
The first one is I kind of don't really know.
Okay.
It's not a thing I kind of think about, and I kind of don't, in a sense, kind of think of vegan. I think there's a sense in which kind of every vegan is kind of beautiful, particularly if they're kind of active and they're going out there trying to spread the message in the best way they can. I think that's like there's an inner beauty about that, and that's kind of more important than the outer beauty in my view.
Nice answer.
How we deal with bullying? I mean, kind of. I mean, bullying comes in different ways. I mean, you can get like this sort of out in the world kind of more physical bullying, or you can get the online bullying stuff. To be honest, it's not something I've kind of massively experienced myself. I mean, I tend to sort of like try to inject humor into it, you know.
Yeah.
And you get and to not be wound up by people. Because people are trying to wind you up. They'll say, I remember there was a guy in prison who said, he was this country guy, and he said, I've shot hundreds of rabbits in my time, I'll let you know. I said, yeah. I said, and every single one of them was more intelligent than you. So I didn't get angry.
Yeah.
The most important thing is not to get angry, because they feed off that. They want you to be angry, they want you to be upset, and they want to see you upset, and they want to feed off that. So even if you're feeling upset or angry, don't show it. Try to respond in a kind of humorous way, like kind of I did, or at the very least, if you can't think of anything humorous, just don't show anger and don't show upset, because that's what they want. And don't show them that. And it's kind of the same online. You'll get people, like, they'll post a picture of, like, maybe an animal being slaughtered, or a picture, post a picture of bacon. I mean, bacon, isn't it, is the big thing.
Yeah, that's the one.
And with the idea that we've never ever seen that before. Oh my God, I never saw bacon before, and you've showed me bacon, and it's like, they killed me,
Yeah.
But that's the thing, and I'd say, well, don't you think I've ever seen bacon before? Or don't you know what I mean? Don't. The thing is not to be upset by it, and not to get kind of angry about it, because that's what they want.
Yeah.
Don't give them what they want. And I'll kind of answer questions. I mean, like, for instance, and I mean, sometimes in response to the adverts we do, is because, of course, they're aimed at the non-vegan community. They're aimed at, like, kind of general, people on Facebook and Instagram. So, of course, we want a lot of non-vegans to see them. And sometimes, you can't stop the comments on them. And sometimes people will come back and say, oh, I love eating meat, or something like that. And what I'll just say, why do you feel the need to say that? I'll ask them the question, why do you feel the need to say that? You throw it back on them to justify what you don't get into an argument. Oh, you're a bastard, and that's disgusting. What about the poor animals? Don't you ever care? I don't do that. I'll just ask the question, why do you feel the need to say that?
Good question.
And then they've got to come back, and more often than not, they never reply.
Yeah, I've noticed,
because they've kind of been, they weren't expecting that.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
And they've got to justify why I said that.
A great question.
And then when they answer that, you think of another question you can ask them.
Yeah.
So you constantly question them, and you, like, pin them down with questions, because you're not then getting in an argument. You're just asking them stuff, and they have to justify themselves. And you can use the same method really with outreach. If someone comes out with stuff like, you can just ask people questions about, because you've got to get people to kind of examine themselves and examine why they are still consuming animal products, why they've still got the attitudes they have. And so asking questions kind of causes them to do that, rather than getting in a debate or an argument with them.
I think
just ask some questions.
You're totally right. Yeah. And one of my favorite questions to the trolls is to actually say, what were you hoping to gain with that comment? What were you hoping to achieve?
Yes.
It's so interesting, because you just, sometimes the responses are very interesting. Sometimes I've had people respond and say, do you know what? I was just trying to upset you, and now I feel stupid. I've had people say that.
Yeah.
And that's, it's so interesting, isn't it?
It throws them, because they're not expecting that, because they want a row.
Right.
And you're not giving them. Don't give them what they want. And if people don't get what they want, if they can't feed off that, then they'll stop. But it can take a while, and it's it's not pleasant, being bullied in any way. But I'd say that's the way. Don't give them what they want from it.
Totally agree. Amazing advice, mate. We've got just 2 more tips. No questions now, but just thank you to JP and Julia for the $10 tip, and thank you to Mandy Bell for the $5 tip. And I'd like to say thank you to you, especially Ronnie, for this. It's been incredible. Feel like we've been all been on a bit of a journey today. All learned so much. And I want to say, big thank you for your time, because you've given us, a lot of your time here. And to say a really big thank you for your time, I'd like to donate €50 to a sanctuary of your choice. So just to say a big thank you to you for coming here today and doing this. So do you have an idea who you'd like to pick? Which sanctuary you think needs it the most?
I just tried to think. Probably like a kind of where's one? I tell you what, there's one called I would say it's very hard to choose, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's very
I'm sorry to put you on the spot. I thought it would be nice to do it live. You know, I should have given you a bit of time to think about it. I know.
So many great vegan sanctuaries, but you know, there's one that I've been involved with a lot, and called Animals in Need in Northamptonshire.
Okay.
And they're great, and of course they're always in need of. They've had, I mean, the animals come into the, and they have farmed animals, and they have all sorts.
Okay.
And they're great, but that doesn't mean there's other ones not as good.
No.
They're just
we give, you know,
they're just great. They're vegan run. They've got a vegan cafe, and they serve the most delicious all day with their cafes out with vegan breakfast there. So they're actually trying to spread the vegan message as well as having the animals there. So that is a really good place, Animals in Need.
Amazing.
And anyone over that way, then I'm sure anyone over that way will know about them.
Amazing. Oh, we'll send it over there. Thank you so much for putting that. I've never heard of them before, so thanks for putting them on my radar. And we'll send it over. Yeah,
Animals in Need, and Animals in Need Northamptonshire is their like official name.
Cool.
They're near Wellingborough in Northants, and they are great people.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, thank you. Everyone in the chat is saying thank you. Everyone's really happy with how this was. Everyone's really pleased. They've learned a lot. So thank you so much again for your time, mate. It's been amazing.
Yeah, and I'd say to everyone listening, and also people, because you know this is I'm going to make sure this is kind of shared as well. I'm sure you will as well, David. That anyone who's listening, either listening now or they're listening to the recording, you know, to really consider, you know, to think to yourself, what can I do, you know, to either get into outreach or increase the amount of outreach I do. In terms of, I mean, you might want to do something, you know, a bit more than outreach, but like to at least do, you know, outreach. What can I do to do it or to increase it? And what can I do in terms of instigating and organising stuff and getting others involved as well? You know, and where I actually live, you know, in my community. And let's get this everywhere, and let's really kind of change things. And we can, if all of us really get involved. So that's it. And then, you know, we can achieve animal liberation. Definitely can.
Amazing. I've said thank you so many times now, mate. But one more time, thank you so much. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Keep the amazing work up, Ronnie. And if you're not doing any work right now, guys, if you're not doing any activism, well, I mean, I don't know how many more times you need to be told. Just do something. Come on, it's that easy. It's very simple. There's so many options, and we'll be here every step of the way to give you all the advice and everything that you'll need to get going. So, you know, just start. That's all it takes. We will, what do I have to update you on? Nothing too much. Keep an eye on the second channel, guys, the Ram's Den. There's some cool podcasts coming up. Like I've got loads of them recorded, and they're all really, really cool. So just, if you're not already subscribed, get on the second channel and subscribe right now. And stay tuned for all that good stuff. This one, I think it's going to stay here on the main channel. I think this one's going to stay right here, but definitely tune into the second channel for more content just like this. And keep calling out that bullshit, guys. We'll see you in the next one.